All right, everybody, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show. And today, we have the crossover with Inside the Bird. Geoff Mosher's here. All right, this interview is going to be fun. First off, Chris Canty, you didn't know this, but I was on your flight. How was Newark to New Orleans?
Oh, it was easy. Smooth sailing. You know, it is what it is. I can't get comfortable because I'm 6'8", 350 pounds. So
your seat was better than mine, put it that way.
Well, you can say that. I just didn't have a whole lot of room even where I was seated at. So, I mean, I can never be comfortable on those flights, even if I'm flying first class. But we got in and out on time, no complaints. It was an easy trip.
It was nice. It was very nice.
Do you ever have to fly in the really small, like I flew?
No, it was first class.
Yeah, but I flew to Indianapolis on those really tiny ones where there's one row each side.
The puddle jumpers?
And Connor Barwin was on the flight with me, and he's 6'7". He's long and lengthy, right? And I watched him sort of like accordion himself into the chair with his and I'm like, my God, I don't know. If you don't have big
painful.
seats, how do you do it?
It's not fun.
Painful.
Rough.
He is, of course, one of the outstanding hosts of our morning show on 97.3 ESPN, Evan, Canty, Michelle. And Evan and Michelle will be on tomorrow. We got Canty today. So our audience perceives that you do not like the Philadelphia Eagles nor Nick Sirianni. Is that an accurate statement?
I'm not sure why the audience would feel that way. Jalen Carter is one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. And I've been saying that this guy is in the conversation for the best player on the Eagles since he was a rookie last year. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. Just the way that he's able to break down the interior of offensive lines, wreck games. If you don't put two sets of hands on him, he will absolutely crush your quarterback. I think Jalen Carter is one of the premier linemen, one of the premier defensive players in our entire game. So I love a lot of what the Philadelphia Eagles want to be about. Toughness, running the football, stopping the run, rushing the passer. That's a formula that has success, especially this time of year. I'm not sure why Eagles fans think I don't.
Well, I'll ask you this. Then who does that come from? Is that from Nick Sirianni, or does he get overlooked at his role in the things you just mentioned?
Well, I think the best thing that Nick Sirianni has done this year is not getting away, right? He's delegated responsibility. Kellen Moore has done a masterful job of calling the plays on the offensive end, but also developing an identity around Saquon Barkley and that physical offensive line running the football. And on defense, Vic Fangio has got it turned around in short order. Now, credit to Howie Roseman. He gets the hockey assist because of what he was able to do with drafting Quinyon Mitchell and drafting Cooper DeJean, and then also Nolan Smith last year in the first round. I mean, Jalen Carter. Think about it. You've got five starters on the defensive side of the ball, year 3 or younger.
Yep.
Howie has done a hell of a job being able to turn over their side of the ball, and Vic Fangio has done a great job of being able to put it together. And credit to Nick Sirianni for not fat-handing this thing and getting in the way of his coordinators doing their jobs. Because, listen, head coaches have egos just like everybody else.
Yeah.
It's hard to be good at your job if you don't have one. But to be able to check your ego at the door and empower your lieutenants to do their jobs, that's not easy, especially given the stakes, especially given that this guy could have been on the outs at the end of last year. Remember, it was over a week before they announced that Nick Sirianni was returning. The team had lost 6 of its final 7 games. So to be on the hot seat coming into this year and not step on your coordinator's toes in the interest of trying to preserve job security, he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for being able to do that.
By the way, real quick, this interview with Super Bowl champion Chris Canty is brought to you by Broadleaf's Plumbing, your local source for plumbing, heating, and air conditioning service and installation. Since 1911, visit broadleafs.net.
All right, Chris, let's nerd out a little bit and talk about the trenches. I'm sure that's your favorite part to talk about. You mentioned Jalen Carter, right? He's been a game wrecker throughout the playoffs. He saved that game against the Rams, right?
No doubt.
The Chiefs have a very good right guard in Trey Smith. So if you're Andy Reid, do you start the game saying, I'm going to have to see if my right guard can block Jalen Carter one-on-one, and then I can use my center and left guard, right, who's my struggling left guard, to try to double team.
Mike Caliendo. He's the fish.
Right.
He's the fish. And here's the thing.
You guys know that, though.
Bill Williams is a problem, too.
That's what I'm saying.
He's a problem,
he needs the double team.
But when you're preparing this week, you guys go to coordinator and say, that's the guy, he's the fish, he's the guy.
Forget about going to the coordinator. We're fighting amongst each other. So you got to remember, when we won a Super Bowl, I was on a D-line that had Osi Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, Jason Pierre-Paul, Matthias Kiwanuka, Rocky Bernard, Linval Joseph, Dave Tollison.
That's pretty deep.
We were deep. And
Very.
so we were fighting. Oh, Jimmy Kennedy was on that D-line too. We were literally fighting for the opportunity to line up against the fish. So we can get the sacks. Like we were just that kind of competitive group. And you feel some of those same vibes with this Eagles defensive front. That front four can take over a game. I mean, Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter, Milt Williams, Jordan Davis, when he's rolling in there, they can take over a game. And so if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you've got to have a plan in terms of how to mitigate the disruption from that defensive front, and you know the sore spot is going to be that left guard position.
They need Smith. They need Trey Smith to be able to block Jalen Carter, because if they need to help Smith and leave somebody alone on Milton Williams, Caliendo, that's a problem. That's when it becomes a close game into a we just wrecked this game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know that you can always slide the protection to your left guard. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Vic Fangio decides to put Jalen Carter over Mike Caliendo and see what the adjustment is for the Kansas City Chiefs. Because if they're going to consistently slide the protection to help Mike Caliendo, well, then you're opening yourself up to being able to bring pressure from the other side of the line.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's what Steve Spagnuolo does a lot with Chris Jones. A lot of people don't recognize on that 4th and 5 in the AFC Championship game where Steve Spagnuolo brings the corner blitz off the left side. Chris Jones was lined up on Deion Dawkins on the right side of the formation.
Right.
So if they slid the protection to block the corner blitz, then all of a sudden you got your best pass rusher one-on-one. And so I think that's a little bit of the chess match that Vic Fangio has got to get into with Andy Reid in terms of how that offensive line is going to try to protect with that pass rush.
Chris Canty's with us. We always talk about coach and quarterback. It's Reid and Mahomes, and they've already cemented their legacy. What does it do for Sirianni? Hurts, his best game he might have ever played was in the Super Bowl, and they lost. So does he have to have a big game? That he's such a weird discussion with the coach quarterback. So if Sirianni and Hurts win this game, how does that change their dynamics?
Well, I absolutely think that has to put Hurts in the conversations of the best quarterbacks not named Patrick Mahomes in our game. Now, a lot of people will push back on that. They're saying, well, Jalen Hurts is not as quote-unquote talented as Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, or Joe Burrow. Well, I don't care about talent as much as I care about winning. When you're talking about talent, it's because you can't talk about winning. And so I just, for Jalen Hurts to have an opportunity to beat Mahomes head-to-head in the postseason, in the Super Bowl, for him to get his team to 2 Super Bowls, for him to have his team in the playoffs. Every year he's been a starter.
Yeah.
To be a guy that's had an All-Pro, to be a guy that was a runner-up in an MVP race. For all of these things, he absolutely has to be in the conversation for best quarterbacks in our game. And I think that puts his career on a Hall of Fame trajectory.
Wow. How about that there, Jeff?
Hall of Fame trajectory? Well,
I absolutely.
the numbers will dictate it.
I absolutely think that about Jalen Hurts. That's how I feel.
And Sirianni?
I think the conversation.
That was a big sigh.
Well, here's what it does. It eliminates any conversation about Nick Sirianni.
Okay.
But we keep asking.
I will tell you,
about
locally,
what does he do that's elite? It doesn't matter.
That Jacksonville game. I mean, he was getting that people wanted him gone, and they won 10 straight after that. And people, locally, he's still kind of a polarizing discussion, no question about it. But it's one of those non-conventional
How about the fake punt when we played against New Orleans in the Superdome? That was ridiculous. Or the Atlanta Falcons Monday night game where he throws the pass, Saquon drops the ball, and the Falcons told you on that very drive that they were concerned with time. That's why they jumped off sides.
Yep. Done a lot of non-conventional things.
So yes, Nick Sirianni, there have been game management gaps. He hasn't been perfect, and he's been the brunt of a lot of criticism and sometimes the butt of jokes. That all goes away with the Super Bowl win against Andy Reid.
He's Chris Canty. You can hear him weekday mornings right here on 97.3 ESPN. Super Bowl champion, Chris Canty with Evan Cohen, Michelle Smallman, and this man right here, Chris Canty. So, will Nick Sirianni get his first, or is Andy going to get his third?
Ooh, I don't think this is going to be a repeat of Super Bowl 57 where 70-plus points are scored. I think it's going to be closely contested, and in a close game, I don't know how you could bet against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. So I'm rolling with the Kansas City Chiefs. I hate to do it. I think the Eagles have the better players. So when we're looking at these two teams, let's be clear about one thing. The Eagles have the better players. Now, whether they end up being the best team is yet to be determined. That's why they play the game. But the Eagles have the better players.
This is the prevailing theme coming down here. Everyone we spoke to has said that. And yet, I don't think if the Eagles lose the game, like most teams that have the better players, it's seen as a choke. I don't think people will say that.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. And Andy Reid.
It's not about losing the game as much as it is about him winning the game. And that's what happened in Super Bowl 57, right? He has the 20-yard scramble on third down, ends up setting up an opportunity for go-ahead points with Harrison Butker. I know that's after the defensive holding. But you understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Mahomes on a bum ankle in Super Bowl 57 making that play with his legs.
Just watched that game the other night.
It's getting Mahomes.
Right.
It's not just a noun, it's a verb. It's getting Mahomes.
Well, that field wasn't very good.
For both.
I know. I'm just saying. It wasn't a very
it was not good.
The field was not good. This one should be much better. Chris Canty all this week on, of course, 97.3 ESPN. And then Monday morning, he'll recap Super Bowl 59 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Good to see you, man.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Enjoy the game.
We certainly will. And that conversation with Chris Canty was brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, your local source for plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. Service and installation since 1911. Visit broadleys.net. More Sports Bash live on Radio Row in New Orleans is coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, everybody, Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, we are live on Radio Row this week. Our Radio Row coverage, it's brought to you by Visit South Jersey. Plan your weekend getaway close to home at visitsouthjersey.com. Our interview with former Eagle, former Saint, Super Bowl champion, Malcolm Jenkins is on with us right now here on the Sports Bash. Well, it's always great to see you, and I know our listeners are thrilled to get a chance to hear from you. How are you, man?
I'm doing well. It's got, the stars are aligning for me right now. I live between Philly and New Orleans, so to have the Eagles in New Orleans all in the Super Bowl, it's a great week for me.
I know, you take a look at winning the Super Bowls here and in Philadelphia, and then seeing the Eagles back here and the success. Obviously the Saints struggled a little bit. You take a look at the Eagles changing things over so often. You were a part of that, and we hear so much this week about the culture. Give us a little insight on the culture of the Eagles and why you think that plays a role in them being here twice in 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even just the team I was on, not many guys are still left. I think Brandon Graham might be, one of the few that I actually played with. Even coaching staff is different. So when you look at how do you maintain culture through that type of turnover, you have to start with ownership and leadership. Now, that's obviously Howie and what Mr. Louis is doing with the team, that they always put winning and being competitive first. They bring in quality guys that understand what it means to be a part of a team, that understand what it means to play in Philadelphia. And have some mental toughness, because you've got to have it to play in Philly. And I think they've been able to consistently put to talented teams, on the field. And I think really the biggest question this year was coming in for me was what was the leadership going to look like for this team, losing to Jason Kelce, losing Fletcher Cox, and having the fallout that you did the year before. Leadership, it wasn't a talent issue, it was leadership. And to really see them, what Saquon Barkley brought to this locker room, to see the maturation of A.J. Brown, to see Jalen still standing up and being who he is, it's been a beautiful thing to watch. And that's something that you have to attribute to, top down.
I was going to ask you because, obviously the defense last year struggled so much, and they bring in a veteran coordinator, but there's so many young players on that defense. And you lose Fletcher Cox, a veteran player. Are you surprised at how quickly their defense was able to go from maybe one of the worst in the league last year to maybe one of the best in the league?
Well, not really. Once you have a coordinator who understands how to use personnel and put them in positions to succeed, you see the difference. But also, I don't think any of us could have predicted the play of Zach Bond. You got a guy who's playing probably should be Defensive Player of the Year at middle linebacker. And then you still bring C.J. Gardner-Johnson back as another veteran in that secondary who can make plays. I think you added the pieces that you needed to stabilize that defense and actually utilize the young talent that you have.
Isn't it funny, and I'm not trying to rip on anybody in the league, but like Joe Shane from the Giants gets all this slack, right, for letting Saquon walk, and nobody says anything about Zach Bond. I mean, he's a defensive player of the year candidate, just like Saquon is an offensive player of the year and MVP candidate. Nobody says anything about that.
Yeah.
All right, so, Malcolm, you know I've covered the team for 20 years now, and I've always said that the 2017 team was the best overall 53 I've seen from an Eagles team since I've jumped on the beat in 04, 05. This year's team might challenge it. I mean, from top to bottom. And that doesn't mean anything other than it's a great semblance of team. But when you look at this team compared to the one you played on, do you think it's more talented?
Yeah. I think if you go position by position, they're more talented. I think we had a little bit more veteran leadership. We had guys who had championship caliber, who've been to championships and knew how to be consistent. And probably played above our actual talent level sometimes.
Sure.
But this team, I think, by far, when you line up the roster, probably has more talent on paper.
Healthier, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Your guys.
Yeah, we came limping into it. And we had to really rely on just on leadership and just kind of gutting it through. We had talent, but at the end there, it was more about us being a team more than anything. Where I think this group had to have that team stuff early.
Sure.
And as they've gone through the year, it's just their talent is just too much to overcome.
Malcolm, you have to have the nature of the position you played, corner, safety, nickel. You must have sort of an appreciation for what Cooper DeJean has been able to do pretty early in his career.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job. You know, playing a nickel is hard. You're not only you're covering like a corner, you're fitting like a safety, you're in the box as a linebacker. You have to know leverage. You have to understand run fits, the offensive scheme. You're closer to the ball, which means everything happens faster. And so usually as a rookie, that is tough to adjust to. But I think they've done a great job of keeping that package pretty limited for him, keeping it something that he can manage. I think his play has been phenomenal. And I think as he's grown in confidence, he just continued to play better, and it's definitely been impressive.
Two-time Super Bowl champion Malcolm Jenkins is here, and, of course, we're getting ready for the Super Bowl, but a lot of people come to this spot to expose people to something different and something new, and you're doing that with an event. You're exposing athletes to art, which is a pretty cool event that you've got going on here in the Big Easy.
Yeah, you know, I got exposed to art pretty early. Growing up, my aunt is an artist. But when I first got in the league, Larry Fitzgerald was somebody who he's a photographer, he's a collector of art, and I've always looked up to him. And I've grown my own appreciation for it. And it's something that I feel like artists, especially somewhere like New Orleans, where the artists and the athletes are the heroes of the city. Yeah. Right, so it's a great opportunity for us to
chefs.
Yeah, and the chefs. Right? Culinary arts, that's all the same, right? But it's a great opportunity during this celebratory event to bring all of that together for a good cause. So I normally do things to raise money for my charity. We work in 4 states that I call home: Ohio, Louisiana, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And so I figured, you know, we're going to raise some money and have some fun. Let's do it around art. So we're doing a game of art this week. We're partnering with Phillips Auction House to do an auction later this May. I've been on the scene going to different events, art fairs, traveling the world, and a lot of the art friends I've made over the last few years have donated works. So people like Hank Willis Thomas, Tavares Strand are donating works, and those funds will go to fund our programs and continue to have a lasting impact in the communities that we call home.
We'll get you out on this. 2 years ago, we had you on the show. And, you know, Eagles fans, they want to blitz, they want to blitz, they want to blitz, they want to blitz. And you said any coordinator worth their weight in salt does not want to blitz. They want to cover. Does Vic Fangio need to do something different in this particular game, or just keep rolling with what has gotten them here?
I think you have to roll with what's gotten you here. Obviously, you're going to be calculated. But I think it's if I'm them, I'm preaching, you know, we've got to steal a possession. It's not that we're going to come out with a new defense and suddenly trick them into losing. We've got to just come out, do what we do, but we need to take the ball in some type of way. So whether that's punching it out, whether that's getting tips or overthrows or creating some type of disruption that gives you those opportunities, I think that's got to be at the top of the list. But at all costs, do not change what's gotten you here. It's what your players know. It's what they're most comfortable with. It's what they'll play the fastest with. And as a coordinator, you don't want to do that. I wrote in my book, in my memoir, I talked about Jim Schwartz, how the night before the Super Bowl, he was afraid of the Patriots' fast-paced offense. So he had all of these substitutions and things that then it just freaked us out. And I remember yelling at him and telling him, like, do not do that. We didn't do any of this up until this point.
Right.
Stick with what we know.
Yeah.
And that's what we did the next day.
Wow, great insight. This interview with Malcolm Jenkins brought to you by Visit South Jersey. Plan your weekend getaway close to home at visitsouthjersey.com. One of your homes, right?
Yeah.
All right. Malcolm Jenkins here, kind enough to join us on Radio Row. Great to see you, man. You look great. You want to play on Sunday?
I think those days are over, but I'll be watching right along with you guys.
Hey, did he win a natty at Ohio State?
No, unfortunately, I lost 2 national championships back to back.
But you got one this year in spirit.
There you go.
There it is.
There he is, Malcolm Jenkins, everybody here. 2-time Super Bowl champion on the Sports Bash. We have so much more coming up. And don't forget to visit SouthJersey.com. Brought you that conversation. We are live on Radio Row. And this hour of the show, it's brought to you by Broadleys, your local source for plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. And right now we're going to be talking with former Atlanta General Manager Thomas Dimitroff as he joins us right now. Amazingly enough, he is on site with us right here. It's a whirlwind, man. I know everybody's got you're just turning your head all over the place. You probably don't know what day, time it is, where you're at, what's going on.
I don't. I was turning the corner, and Jay Glazer came up and gave me, Jay's not the guy to mess around with, and he, gives me a bear hug, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, I got to keep on top of this. No, it's busy. I'm drinking a matcha, and someone's like, hey, man, you got some caffeine in you right now.
You need it. You need it in this place. It's funny. We've been talking all day with different, tight ends and wide receivers and linebackers, but these two teams, the way they were built, to kind of pick your brain, you've probably dealt with both of these guys and know the understandings of the way. But Roseman, Brett Veach, Andy Reid, and the way they build these teams, how much does that go into why these two teams are back here?
100%. You guys aren't looking for me to have a stroke fest with Howie. I get it. But Howie is at the top of his game. He is. And so is Brett Veach. So I love talking about both of them. And when you look at Howie and his approach, by the way, when the building of the team is obviously vital, but leading up to the building of the team is vital as well. I'm talking about he is not afraid to surround himself with really good football people, right? From Matt Russell to Dave Caldwell. He's got all kinds of really good scouting people. He does his work, by the way. You guys probably know that. He does a lot of work and continue to always hone his skills as an evaluator, right? Which is not, by trade, that's not him.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to do all that, not sit on his hands, right? In today's world, you cannot be a lame GM sitting on your hands, conservative guy. You won't last, not for long, we know that. Brett Veach does that in a very different way, right? And you guys can go into specifics here, of course. But Brett Veach is playing a little bit behind Andy Reid, right? And rightly so, one of the best to ever coach it. He's there. He navigates that so well. He doesn't have to be the in-charge guy like Howie does, but he handles it very, very well. What both of these teams do is vital, and that is making sure that they're always regularly meeting with their coaching staffs, and the coaching staffs are disseminating exactly what it is scheme-related, so you do pick the right players who fit. You can make so many mistakes out there, of course, when you have very athletic and talented people but don't fit your scheme. We've had it before. Man, it's a hair puller outer or whatever you call it as a GM. It drives you nuts when you're not matching your scheme with your player.
Roseman's an interesting guy. Polarizing. People hated him. They wanted him gone. And then he's Howie's season. He's the greatest thing ever. He's not the football guy.
All within 6 months.
Right. Well, but listen, we're in the Philly market. People had to come around, and now, I think he might be safe. But, no, he definitely wouldn't do that.
I understand.
How much has he evolved? You've probably dealt with him in trying to make deals. And hey, he calls you saying, we always laugh. We're like, how do people keep taking this guy's calls at this point of his career? What is it like dealing with Howie?
You know what? It's funny because Howie and I came up around the same time, right, as far as having that GM job early on. And I used to joke with him all the time. I'm like, you used to call me and ask for deuces, seconds every time. And I said, sometimes, that free agent, Howie, is not, you're never going to get a second from me. So we got through all of that, of course, and we developed a really good relationship because I do respect people in the league who their butts off, who are focused, who are sharp minds. And Howie has, in my mind, from my perspective, I'm not in your market. You guys have your opinions. Within the league, he is highly respected. I think even to a point, you're not going to want to hear this, he has an element to him where the young GMs are nervous to pick up that phone because they're like, this cat's he's gonna have me twisting and turning, and I don't know where I'm gonna go on this trade. The older guys don't. The older guys aren't worried about that. But imagine that. The very first trade I ever did was with Al Davis, by the way. I was beyond nervous. I call him up, and we're trying to deal D'Angelo Hall very quickly, if you can remember that. I call him, does the deal. We do it for a second round. He calls me 2 weeks later. He's like, I want my damn pick back, and he's all over me. I'm thinking, this is Al Davis going to, ostracize me from the league. It was a joke in the end, but what I'm saying is there's a little bit of that going on here, and you guys probably don't want to compare Howie Roseman to Al Davis right now, but he's got a presence in the league right now.
You did the Asante Samuel deal with him, correct?
I did. That's right. We only did 2 deals. I think it was Asante Samuel, and there was someone right in 19 or something Didn't do that many.
Right.
Didn't do that many.
Right. He's almost painting a picture of that movie about the draft, which was was it called the draft? I don't remember.
Draft
Day. Draft Day. Where,
I want my picks back.
Right. Where Costner's like, who's the one who's gonna shake in his boots?
Well, I mean, it's funny when you said it. I just watched Draft Day. I just flew home from Thailand, so I watched Draft Day on the way home, he's like, who's that Jacksonville GM? He's a new guy. Let's get him. He'll cave, right?
That's exactly right. No, that happens. But I look, the league, the really good, top-notch guys in the league in this role, they have a well-rounded view of everything, and they're multi-layered. They're not just myopic football people, in my mind. Howie, by the way, I will put this in. Howie was very involved in the international scene. When that thing went down, when he took his time off. That's important because
he took his time off, or
did he take his time off? Well, the point is that everything that's going on in sport and building teams has a lot to do with, of course, the building, but it has everything to do with player care. It has to do with data utilization of data. I don't know if you guys are going to fold in the company I'm working for right now. I believe in that way. I think it's important. You have to have a guy that's managing that part of your team and have a wide aperture in my mind. I don't think you can be a myopic guy unless you're just hired for that. And that's not why Howie is hired.
So Nick Sirianni has a phrase, and it's, you can't be great without the greatness of others around. We're having a discussion about Howie Roseman here, who's done a great job. But Howie will be the first to tell you that if they couldn't manipulate the cap the way they do, legally of course, with ownership's backing and Jeffrey Lurie saying, I'm willing to put this amount of cash, not cap route, year after year after year, which some owners, Thomas, right, they don't do that. I mean, you have to have that kind of infrastructure and someone willing to do it the way Jeffrey Lurie does, correct?
That's exactly right. And I think the creativity of the cap and cash over cap, and however, we were always cash over cap. That's just what we were in Atlanta. But that was because Arthur Blank wanted us to be there.
Sure.
People used to throw darts like crazy at me that way, thinking that, it's a cap hell. And I'm like, no, that's not it. We as an organization always wanted to spend at a certain level, and that was big for us. And I think, this comes back to what I said earlier. You cannot sit on your hands, and the creativity on the cap and what Howie does and what, who's his AGM that's on that? Is that Alec Halaby?
Alec Halaby is, Bryce Johnson, and he had Jake Rosenberg for a while, who's left. But yeah.
I just think that's a vital part of it. You got to be on top of that.
And the fact that, this is, you were in Atlanta, you were in New England before that, and obviously teams go to successful places. Hey, you're in New England, what are they doing? We want you here. They lose Philadelphia, it seems like 2 front office members every single offseason. It's like, I was just surprised no one's ever tried to get Howie to leave.
I was talking to someone the other day about that. They said, why would someone not do that? And it's a really good point because they're doing it with coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, the coaching thing and the trade for coaching thing is real, by the way. I mean, I would say if I ever came back, that would be something that I would seriously think. It's not easy to do. So
Trade for a coach.
Trade for a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, there are about 3 or 4, and I won't get into them now. You can imagine who they are that are worth legitimate trades. I mean, I think it's only happened 8 times in the history, I think. But I think it's a viable choice because it's so important. Back to the Howie thing. You get a top-notch person that way, that means you know what you'll be doing? You'll be spending $10, $12 million on that person. Which, by the way, and this is not my plug for GMs making a lot of money, but it kind of is. And I love the head coaches making money. But you see those numbers that are coming out right now, and you still, listen to us crying in our soup. Those GMs are making 3 times less. So a GM right now, as you know, a good GM's making $6, $7 million a year. Head coaches, what are they making? First-timers are making maybe $15 million a year.
Yeah, Ben Johnson just got, $13 million?
Yeah. Those are big numbers these days. So, yeah, it's a good point.
Thomas, I wanted to ask you about the what Howie has done in terms of the draft, because that was one of the big knocks on him, it seemed like, it for a while. He wasn't really hitting on those first-round picks. And when you go through the list now, it's like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, 2 first-round picks. Jalen Hurts, a second-round pick. Look what he's turned into. Even Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. Lately, he's had a lot of success there. How, in this salary cap age, how important is that to hit with all those picks?
It's vital. I mean, it's vital to make sure that you have, again, let's bring it back a little bit, that you have the right people around you that are providing you with the right information as a GM. You're digging in, you're evaluating, like I believe that how he does with the people that he has. The other thing that I think is vital is your coaches to be involved appropriately in the process. You can't force feed your talent on your coaches. It drives you nuts too, because you can come to the table with a really good offensive tackle, but your offensive line coach is for some reason against the player, and then you say, no, we're going to have you play this guy, and then it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I think right now, though, where Howie is with his control of that organization, right? He has final football say, hands down. He can make sure that those coaches, and I'm sure there are coaches in there, and you guys probably don't want me to say this either, but I'm sure there are coaches in there that are fearful of Howie. Like, they tiptoe around him. Yes, got it. I'll coach the guy no matter how you want it to be. That's an important thing when the cachet for the coaches to say, all right, I'm going to do whatever I can to make this guy work. And not that he's misleading them or muscling them in to agree to that right tackle, but he is allowing them to say, calm down. This is not about you, offensive line coach, calling all your mushroom guys, the 31 others. It's about us evaluating together and making the decision together. That's vital for an organization to hit.
Let me ask you, go a different direction here, because while we got you here, it just dawned on me, I got to ask you about this. Saquon Barkley comes to Philadelphia. You see those video clips of what went on in New York. You've been in that room. You've had those conversations. Could you have let a guy like Saquon go? If you were in that situation, I mean, take us in there. I mean, how hard was that for them? Were you surprised when you heard those conversations?
I wasn't surprised, because I think what happens is, as a general manager with the ownership group, and your group, right? We remember what it was. It's, you look at all the different elements. You're worried about injuries. You're trying to be, and I remember Belichick was all about this. I mean, Bill would stress to all of us, you need to be in front of it, right? So even if you move on from someone a year early, it's kind of out of your hands, and let's find. No one projected, I'm sure, that he was going to go there and rip it up the way he did. Now, along with the whole running back situation, that was tough, because there was so much out there amongst the leadership group and the GMs. Why would you ever pay? Why do you worry about a running back? There's a 4th, 5th, or 6th rounder out there that can take
Is that going to change?
I think so. I think now it doesn't move that running back to making $25 million a year, but I think it just has people.
Because there was a lot of running backs this offseason: Henry, Jacobs, Barkley.
Yeah, and then but you look at everyone. They were on a mode. I mean, look at Gibbs. The way, I mean, you watch that kid play.
Yeah,
I love it.
Awesome.
Bijan Robinson. I mean, now the Falcons don't get to the playoffs again, but that guy, you run that cat for the next 5 years. You don't worry about injuring him. That's the other thing. There is a short-lived element.
True.
You can't tiptoe around it, though.
By the way, you were with Dan Quinn in Atlanta. Is Washington, do you believe that they've turned a page now because of Dan, quarterback, if they got that right?
Yeah, I think the quarterback head coach thing is very vital there. They've done a great job feeding off of that.
By the way, I've enjoyed this conversation. I hate the fact that we have to let you roll here, but Thomas Dimitroff, former Atlanta Falcons general manager, getting the insight that we just got, awesome for the people out there. We appreciate you stopping by, man.
Anytime. Let me know if it's close to the draft. You need any tidbits.
Absolutely, yes.
Guys.
We'll certainly be in touch. And that conversation brought to you by Circle Hyundai off exit 109. It's worth the drive. Huge rebates and savings every Circle Hyundai in stock. Row here in the Big Easy, New Orleans, which is, by the way, one of the more unique cities maybe in the entire world. Anybody else have food, music quite like this place? It's like when you get here, you're like, no one else is like this place. Brian Billick, Ravens head coach, 1999-2007. He is a Super Bowl champion. The Eagles trying to make it their second Super Bowl, and he joins us right now on the Sports Bash live on Radio Row. Coach Billick, good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
It's the Super Bowl never gets old. This event just keeps bigger and bigger and bigger. How different is this event from the Ravens Super Bowl?
Well, just the sheer that's the big thing about the Super Bowl that coaches have to deal with is just the magnitude of this event, the sheer logistics. When you just look around this hall and you recognize the sheer presence of virtually every radio and television and streaming service, just the magnitude of it. And that's really where you have to help your team the most, because they're coming into an atmosphere that if they haven't been here before, it can be overwhelming. So you try to normalize your practice structure and what you're doing during the course of the week from today on. Up to now, it's just you just let it go. It's whatever it is, it is. But now you want it to feel a little more normal for the players. You get back into your practice routine to try to remind them at the end of the day, the game is still the game.
Coach, I want to get your perspective on preparation this week and what changes for the head coach. You have Andy Reid, who's obviously done this multiple times. Nick has been here.
Right.
But is it a different week for you guys?
Well, you really have to look at it. It's 2 weeks because it's really about managing that bye week and what you want to get done and then coming in during the course of the week. What most people do is the first couple days, and we had a great administrative staff. Okay, you guys get all the ticket stuff and travel. You get all that handled, okay? You don't even have to come back into the office. Coaches put the game plan together. The best advice I got was to have your game plan done that first week. We did very little. We didn't even work out. We did have walkthroughs. You get the game plan installed so that you show up on Sunday or Monday. You could play the game. But then when we get here, you realize and you just absorb everything that's going wild on Mondays and Tuesdays and the fans and the media and everything about it. But as a coach then, like I said, it's okay. Now I got to put us back on familiar footing. Wednesday's got to feel like every Wednesday we've ever had. Third, the same sequence, and you want it to be the same. We actually put the pads back on, try to get our pads back underneath of us. You had to freshen up the game plan a little bit because you didn't want it to get stale, but it was all about managing the time from Wednesday till kickoff.
Coach, your Super Bowl was remembered for having a great defense, a great running game, Jamal Lewis, and a quarterback who did a nice job securing the football.
Absolutely.
When you look at the Eagles, is it hard not to see 24, 25 years later where, we went through a long stretch of passing? This Eagles team has a lot of components of what your Super Bowl team
does, and it has the right components. The physicality of what the defense represents, their ability to handle the run, and to me that's going to be the key. Because Kansas City, beyond just the fact that Patrick Mahomes is such a unique talent, they're a team that's built on good defense and running the ball. And obviously Patrick Mahomes augments that in a very unique way. The Eagles are supremely situated to match and beat that physicality. I think they can handle the run with their standard spacing fronts, the front seven or the front six based on and which is going to be huge. That, to me, is going to be the biggest challenge. If they can, and then continue to show the physicality in running the ball, setting up the big plays to A.J. Brown down the field, that can be a winning formula for them.
How do you just explain, in all the years of coaching and analyzing, a guy like Zach Bond, who goes from special teamer, kind of afterthought, edge rusher, to defensive player of the year candidate at inside linebacker in his first year ever playing it?
Yeah, it's an evolution of the players and matching, and you give the coaches great credit.
Definitely.
Of matching his skills to what you need for him to do. A lot of times, you take a good athlete and you put him in a position and you need to do this, and he either flounders or he flourishes, one or the other, just based on the sheer physicality of what he does. Vic Fangio and that group, everybody, Vic is at best, and Vic worked for me before, beyond the schemes. And the best thing that Vic Fangio does is he puts players in a position to win. He has them do what they do best and maximizes that rather than putting somebody in a position and saying, well, we need for you to do this. Try to hang on and see if you can produce.
We're talking with Brian Billick, of course, the Super Bowl winning head coach from the Baltimore Ravens. Before we get to XTECHpads.com and your investment there, which we heard a lot about the safety of the game with Roger Goodell the other day. You're an offensive guy. I know many people look at those Ravens teams and think defense. When you look at the Eagles' offense, is there more? If you had this talent, would you say there's more? Or do you like the fact that they have said, you know what, we've got Barkley. Who cares about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith?
There's always more. I'm a coach, man. There is always more.
He sounds like he's been hanging around Philadelphia.
But what I see in Philadelphia, which is obviously a sheer physicality to what they do, they believe in it. And I know can they really throw the ball down the more? Can they be more explosive? they've done what they needed to do to win and play to that strength. It's like the team that gets a lot of turnovers and is on a short field and wins the game big, and you look and go, but they only had 250 yards of offense. Well, that's because that's all they needed. That's the way the game. The Eagles, I think, and they're buying into that personality. Could they be more explosive? Sure.
Yep.
And will that show up? May they need that this game? Possibly.
It's in your back pocket.
Yeah, exactly right. This is going to be a good game because I think they match up very well with, oddly enough, Kansas City. Even though it's Patrick Mahomes, this is a team that's built on defense and running the ball.
It's crazy. I think most people said 2 years ago the Eagles have the better team, but they have Reed and Mahomes. Almost feels similar this time around, right? Where the Eagles might have the best 53, but they have Reed and Mahomes.
The difficulty for the Eagles, because I'm asked all the time who's going to win, and I'll do 50 shows today on Radio Row, and half of them I say the Eagle, and half of them I say Kansas City, and then on Monday I only do shows that I said that I picked the winner, because then half the country thinks I know what I'm talking about.
You are a seasoned veteran, Coach.
X-Tech, we heard a lot about the safety of this game. Tell us about the X-Tech shoulder pads and how that is helping with all of this.
It's the next evolution of protection for our players. It's the ultimate. What's in the game? Take the head out of the game. Well, that means the shoulder pads become that much more important. It's the leading pad in pro football. Better than 90% of the players are wearing X-Tech pads. Majority of major colleges, high school. What I'm really excited about is we're now getting down into the youth level. I have grandsons. I won't let them play unless it's an X-Tech pads because these pads in the old days, it's like everything. Technology has improved it to the point. This is at the forefront. These aren't just big pads on big guys and little pads on little guys. These pads, after 13 years, AI-driven, based on your height, your weight, your position, your injury history, what level you're at, because the targeted fitting of the protection for our players, that's where the evolution of the protection of our players is right now, whether it's the helmet, whether it's the way we practice, the shoes, the fabrics they wear. It's about maximizing the protection and the efficiency of the players. X-Tech pad is that pad.
Coach Brian Billick, head coach of the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens. He's in the Ring of Honor, and of course, he is here on the Sports Bash. And his interview is brought to you by South Jersey Gas, providing reliable natural gas service and energy-saving programs you can count on. By the way, check xtechpads.com, and you can check them out on Instagram. I know there's a lot of local high school and youth league coaches that listen in our area, so check out those pads, xtechpads.com. Coach,
great. Thank you, guys.
Who are you picking on this show?
Let's see. Let me guess.
We're the Eagles affiliate.
The Eagles.
All right, then we're going to have you back on Monday to talk about
All right.
Head Coach Brian Billick, everybody here on the Sports Bash live on Radio Row in New Orleans. And that interview, again, was brought to you by South Jersey Gas, providing reliable natural gas service and energy programs you can count on. More Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Geoff Mosher, Scott Grayson, our entire Sports Bash crew. We are live in the Big Easy. We've got Harry Douglas set to join us here from ESPN Radio. Freddie and Harry. We heard Harry all throughout the platforms this week and, of course, leading into the Super Bowl. And he is set to join us right now on Radio Row here in New Orleans. And this conversation with Harry Douglas is brought to you by South Jersey Gas. South Jersey Gas provides reliable natural gas service and energy-saving programs you can count on. Harry Douglas, welcome to the show, man.
Well, thank you, guys. And first and foremost, speaking of gas and energy, that whole nine, the bill I just received on my email for my bill this month is not a very friendly one.
No?
I sent it to my wife. I was like, I might be putting everybody at the damn house for the next month.
Energy costs rising, South Jersey Gas.
Kids and all.
Well, Harry, man, we've ascended to the Big Easy. This is, I mean, I know you played in Atlanta and this big rivalry here, but this city's something else, man. It's a unique spot, this New Orleans.
Well, number one, you think about the culture, right? And a lot of people compare it to Atlanta. You have music, you have the culture, you have food. And I tell people all the time, my two favorite things when it comes to New Orleans in this state is the food and the women. So number one, when I say the women, I'm talking about my wife, baby, because her dad's side of the family is from the 9th Ward. You know what I mean? So thank you to Mr. Anderson bringing me my beloved wife. who has helped me tremendously. Yeah. Because, Lord and behold, I needed it.
Well, let's, Harry, you played, of course, 10-year NFL veteran with the Atlanta Falcons, wide receiver. That's an interesting role in this game, right? You look at Philadelphia's wide receiving core, and we ask, why not more? Why not more? You as a wide receiver, do you wonder the same thing, or you say, no, I get it, man. You got Saquon, and he's doing his thing. They're fine. Or do you want to see more from A.J. Devontae?
Surprisingly, I'm going to give you an answer that you're probably not going to expect from a former wide receiver. The run game is so valuable for the pass game, and when you have the ability to rush the football effectively like we see the Philadelphia Eagles second in the NFL this season, it makes the pass game that much easier. And I told a story earlier on ESPN Radio about, going in we had a meeting room, and I was in the room with Roddy White and Julio Jones, and Roddy White was looking at the script for one of the practices. And he was like...
Not the NFL script for this game, right?
No. So he basically was like, there are too many passes on the sheet. Like, we have to run the ball. Like, we can't be this one-dimensional. And he went upstairs, and we changed a lot of things in it. And granted enough, a lot of wide receivers, we love the run game because that means we're going to get the one-on-one coverage. Now more guys that have to be committed to the box come in and try to stop and, make the run deficient. So when you look at A.J. Brown, he's been the best wide receiver versus man coverage this season. I think the forgotten guy this season has been Devontae Smith. And Devontae Smith in the last 3 games versus the Kansas City Chiefs, he's averaging 6 catches, 107 yards receiving. Because he's the guy that can beat man coverage, but also get in certain spots and vacant spots in zones. So I think Devontae Smith, when it comes to this matchup, is going to play a huge role.
I think when you look at Philadelphia's in their offense, it's so Barkley-centric this year.
Yep.
But when you look on the outside looking in, is it really that Barkley-centric? Like, if you're a defensive coordinator, it's got to be a nightmare to figure out what to do with this team because at any week they can decide this is the week we're going to throw the ball.
You know what? I disagree, though.
No?
I disagree.
What about the week where A.J., they said, what's wrong? Passing. Then the next week they said, we'll show you. We can throw boom, boom, boom. I'm just throwing all over the place.
And they played who? The Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah.
What was the deficiency of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense?
True.
The pass defense.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say I disagree is because what's demoralizing to a football team, especially a defense, is when you have the ability to run and move a man from point A to point B against his will. And there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, Harry, the offensive line for the Eagles, obviously you played in this league a long time. How good is this offensive line, and how much do they dictate that kind of punishment on the opponent?
So I think it's a top 2 offensive line in the NFL right now currently, and they're led by Lane Johnson. Right? A lot of people thought there was going to be tremendous drop-off because Jason Kelsey, but you look at everyone, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, those guys have really stepped up. But I believe going against this Kansas City Chiefs defense, when you have a Chris Jones that has the versatility to play inside and move outside, it gives the defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, a lot of wiggle room as a play caller. And you can dial up a lot of different things. When you have a defensive tackle that's that disruptive, and you can put him and move him around that offensive line, and we got 2 guys that coming into this game a little banged up, Dickerson and Cam Jurgens, right? So at any point, if those guys get re-injured, then Chris Jones is going to have a field day.
Harry, I wanted to ask you about A.J. Brown from a wide receiver standpoint. The concept of late hands we see all the time with him, where the ball's in the air, and at the last second, he's able to pluck it out over the shoulder. Is that a coachable trait, or is that, because I don't see a whole lot of wide receivers, especially as big as him, being able to do that, or is that just something that's innate?
I think both. You have coaches that emphasize it. We did it with Coach Terry Robisky in our room. And I thought Julio Jones used to be really great at that. Mm-hmm. Late hands, not letting the defender know, and man coverage, if it was side by side with Julio, that the ball is actually coming, and making everything look like it's a runoff on a run play. A.J. Brown does a phenomenal job, but he also has that body mass, right? He's a big, strong body wide receiver. So, if he's going to get smaller defenders, it's going to be easy for him, and he fighting through contact, right? Mm-hmm. Guys grabbing onto your arm. It never impedes his path in his route or anything like that. So I think it's a skill, something that you can teach yourself, but also something that your coach can implement in drills.
He's a really physical player, too. You were just mentioning
I love it.
Breaks tackles. I mean, the Eagles are known as a physical team, which starts with the offensive line. But when you have him and Goddard in the passing game, making all the yards, not after catch, but after contact, I feel like that adds to the extra element of why the Eagles are so physical, because it just doesn't stop with the running game.
So let me say this about AJ too, because I don't see him catching as many balls in the middle of the football field as he did when he was with the Tennessee Titans.
Right.
And that's something I would like for Philadelphia to do better moving forward, because I want to see him in a 3-by-1 formation lined up at number 3, right? And he has that delta over route catching a football, or lined up at number 3 and run a 3-man option with a number 2 shallow coming across the field.
Sure.
I want to see those things. I want to see A.J. Brown on a slot fade. Those are the things I want to see from him, especially on key third down plays.
I want to talk to you, Harry, about Jalen Hurts, because nationally he's not really seen as one of the top quarterbacks in the game lately, it seems like, at least what we've been hearing in Philadelphia as well. The lack of respect, does he need to win this game in your mind to get more respect, or is he already starting to get it this week?
I think after watching him in the NFC Championship game, you've seen a lot of more people bring the respect towards him. But if you're able to negate a three-peat, if you're able to beat the standard in the National Football League, in which, you know, when it's all said and done, there are going to be a lot of quarterbacks that played this game that we view as great that won't have a Super Bowl because of Patrick Mahomes. If you're able to not be one of those guys and to dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, you have to go in a different type of category. And what we do know about Jalen Hurts, he's a winner, man. You look at his days in Alabama, and adversity has never sunken him or put him in a sunken ship. He's only fed off of it and has come back and faced that adversity and had a ton of success in every single opportunity.
We talked a lot about last week leading into the show or to the Super Bowl. As Jalen gets a lot of criticism, he doesn't throw for 300 yards, he's not this guy, he's not that guy, and they said it doesn't really matter. The best game he ever played, they lost.
Yes.
And you wonder how much Philadelphia and having Hurts, them not having to worry about getting him his, how much that makes them the team that they are.
Well, I think it's important in, number one, to be selfless. The team goal was to win a championship. Right, and I'll sit up here and I'm gonna defend A.J. Brown too. I don't think A.J. Brown is a selfish player.
You got his book?
At all, right there. And as soon as I seen him on the sideline reading his book, I praised him for taking the proper steps to not blow up. Because I'll tell y'all, what number one wide receiver? I played with 2, Roddy White and Julio Jones. There's no way in hell I can imagine a game plan where your number one receiver isn't trying to get the football. And those guys weren't vocal about getting it, but our offensive coordinator never put him in that position as well. So for Kellen Moore, you have to make sure, as an offensive coordinator, your receiver is never in that position.
Yeah.
You can throw him screens, nows, slants, the whole 9. Let him touch the football.
We're talking with Harry Douglas, host of Freddie and Harry here on ESPN Radio. And, of course, the narrative, it seems, everybody this week is that Philadelphia has the better roster. They have Reed and Mahomes. Is that a fair narrative? Is that something you're looking at?
The Eagles do have a better roster. They have a better team on paper. But what you can't take away from Kansas City is experience. Look at their secondary. They have all young guys except for one player, and that's Justin Reed. The rest of their secondary are in year 1, 2, or 3. But those players that I'm talking about have been to 2 Super Bowls, and this is their 3rd one, so they have that experience. I think you also, when you look at the supporting cast and why teams haven't been able to dethrone the Chiefs, the supporting cast of Patrick Mahomes, when their number is called, they show up and make the play. That wasn't the case for Buffalo last week. That wasn't the case for the Baltimore Ravens last year in the AFC Championship game. That wasn't the case when it came to the Houston Texans and C.J. Stroud got sacked 8 times. Right? So it's quarterback-centric as we make these games.
Yeah.
What we can't forget is that it is the ultimate team game, and other guys have to play their parts too.
Is there a matchup in this game, personnel-wise, that it will be too insurmountable for the team to overcome?
No.
You take a look at, they got Caliendo playing guard. A lot of people have brought that matchup up. You know, if you can somehow get, a matchup there, or is there? So there's not a weakness that's going to. Oren Burks at linebacker filling in for Nakobe Dean. Last year he was in this game. They had a pretty good day with Travis Kelce matched up
But
there.
I would also say Oren Burks has come up huge in the playoffs.
He has, yeah.
Oren Burks forced a fumble on the very first play of the game versus Green Bay.
Yep.
He's another guy that forced a fumble versus the Washington Commanders, right? At a time where I thought if the Commanders went down and scored a touchdown, it would have made it a 4-point game, and maybe the pressure's on Philly. Maybe they don't come out and win that game, right? So Oren Burks is also a guy that has stepped up to the plate and stepped in for Nakobe Dean.
Harry, is there a coach, a coordinator in this game, or just conceptually, somebody has to come out of what they do best a little bit to stop the other?
Making you think.
Might have to be Spags.
He has to come out of what he does?
Now,
because of the run?
Here's
run?
Here's the part to it. You gave Spags 2 weeks to prepare.
Right. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
so you have ample time to be able to implement new things if you want to. And they're so well coached. Another part of being able to go on a quest to win the three-peat is having smart players. You might not be the most athletic. You might not be the best in the National Football League, but you have smart players that do with their coach and understand how to attain information. And just because you draw up a certain way on the board, it's not going to be like that on the football field, but they understand that. And they know how to still overcome that and make the plays.
How do you see this game playing out? Who do you like? Close game? Like one team to win it big? How do you see it?
I see the Chiefs three-peating. I do want a close game, but that's why I had the Chiefs winning it, because it's close.
Okay.
If the game was 38-35 2 years ago, if that's the score again, who wins that game?
Chiefs.
Close game, back and forth. They figure out a way.
In order for Philly to win this game, don't make it close.
If the Chiefs win this Super Bowl and three-peat, when will they ever not win a Super Bowl again?
But see, that's another question, because we keep hearing about potentially Travis Kelce could be retiring. Why would you retire and you have an opportunity to four-peat?
Yeah.
What sense does
There's
that
more
make?
money for him out of this game,
But still,
right?
about history, how much more further you could put yourself with this Kansas City Chiefs dynasty if you four-peat after you three-peat.
Harry
Great
Douglas, host of Freddie and Harry, and, of course, you can hear him on ESPN Radio. Of course, all the platforms. You see him all over the place. Great spending some time with him right here on the Sports Bash, giving a little insight on this game, the wide receiver position. Will A.J. Brown, will it be Smith, or will it be one of the Chiefs receivers who has the big game? We'll find out. Super Sunday right here on 97.3 ESPN. Harry, thank you so much. In this conversation with Harry Douglas, brought to you by South Jersey Gas, providing reliable natural gas service and energy-saving programs you can count on. South Jersey Gas, bringing you this conversation. All right, welcome back to Sports Bash Radio Row. Live on Radio Row in New Orleans here on a Sports Bash Wednesday. Our interview is brought to you by Circle Hyundai off exit 109. It's worth the drive. Huge rebates and savings on every Circle Hyundai in stock. Well, we've been talking a lot, Jeff, about the uniqueness of New Orleans. This is a city like no others, and one of the unique parts of it is the food in this place. It's like you can't find it. You drive a half hour out, the food's different. The music's different. It's such a cool spot. We're going to touch on a little bit of that, and, of course, the Super Bowl. And one of the big matchups in this Super Bowl, our next guest can talk a little bit about, is former NFL Pro Bowl tight end Kyle Rudolph is with us here. We want to get his thoughts on the tight end matchup, Dallas Goedert, and, of course, Travis Kelce. Those two are going to play a big role. And we're also going to dive into the taste of the NFL. Anne-Marie Crowdham. Did I get that right? Close. Krautheim. Yes. My second option, letter B, was the way to go, is with us here from Gen Youth. She's the CEO as well. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Kyle, let's start with you first, because we've got a big matchup at tight end here. I think everybody looks at Kyle, Dallas Goedert, and Travis Kelce as two of the best tight ends in this league. When you watch those two guys, as a guy who did it at a Pro Bowl level, give us some insight on what you watch from those two players.
Well, I think I'll start with Travis, and he's a guy that really done it unlike anyone else. The relationship, the familiarity that he has with Patrick. You see the adjustments that he makes throughout the course of a play based on coverage. When you're on the same wavelength with your quarterback like those two guys are, it makes it so difficult to cover that guy, to take him away. People every week, they go into the game like, oh, we got to stop Travis Kelce. You got to stop Travis Kelce. And it almost never happens. And it's because of that. You can think you have a coverage call that's going to take him away, and ultimately those two seem to figure it out. And then on the other side, Dallas Goedert is a guy, comes into the league out of a small school, he's South Dakota boy, super talented kid. In my opinion, one of the few guys in our league that still do it the old school way. Obviously, if you're playing tight end in that Philly offense, you've got to know how to run block. Saquon's such a huge part of that offense. And to me, it's very familiar to when I played and you have Adrian Peterson and Dalvin Cook.
Right.
Like, yeah, we're going to throw the ball around and we've got skill players on the edge, but in order for us to have the success that we have, it's going to start with running the football. And Dallas is a huge part of that. He has to be involved in the run game. Obviously, Philly's offensive line is incredible, but the tight end is a huge piece of the run game. And then certainly when he has his opportunities on third down in the red zone, making big catches in the play-action pass game on first down. So Dallas is a great player, a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it's like, when you are, I don't want to say the afterthought, but you got A.J. Brown, you got Devontae Smith, and it's like, oh, you have Dallas Goedert too. Mm-hmm. How hard is it for that when you're like the third option to find your role when you probably could be a first option a lot of places?
Yeah, well, so as a tight end, one of the things that's unique about our position, and I joked about this earlier this morning, if you're a receiver and you're not getting the ball, you're kind of worthless. There's nothing else for you to do. Your job is to catch the football. And that's why receivers at times get so frustrated when they're not involved in the game because, like, look, man, I'm here to catch the ball. Throw me the rock. As a tight end, I just mentioned Dallas and his ability to impact the run game. There's ways to stay involved. There's ways to be engaged in the game when maybe the ball hasn't come your way yet. And you never know when that opportunity is going to come as a tight end. It could be on a huge third down. It could be a play-action pass on 1st and 10 that really sets you up for success on a drive. And certainly we all know when you get down into the red zone, there's really no better weapon for the quarterback than a big-body tight end. So it's a position in which, yeah, you might be the third option behind two elite wide receivers, but at some point during the game, you're going to have to make a huge catch. And I think we've seen Dallas do that time and time again. When his number's called, he steps up with big catches and run after the catch.
Kyle, I've made the argument that I really think when you watch the Eagles and when their passing game is at its best this year, in the past it's been a little more explosive, that you would see A.J. Brown really getting those one-on-ones on the outside. Teams are defending them differently. I believe that the passing game is at its best when it runs through Dallas Goedert in an RPO, in play action, and then when you play a team like the Chiefs that's going to send different exotic looks up front, leave some one-on-ones on the outside. The middle of the field for both guys, even Travis Kelce, because the Eagles play so much zone, this calls for a tight end type of game.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a betting man, I'm taking the over on Trav's receptions. Like, it's just he's going to find holes in the zone to get, they might not be explosive plays downfield, and Philly will play their zone and make you kind of dink and dunk your way. But I'm taking the over. Whatever the number is, I'm taking the over on his catches. But, yeah, for Dallas on the Philly side, when you think about the way their offense is built, incredible offensive line, the one of, if not the best back in football, having an incredible year, there's so many opportunities for the tight end to take advantage of that. You mentioned the RPO world, the play-action pass world. Yeah, you can line up and throw the ball on the outside to your receivers, but, things can look very similar on 1st and 10 to Saquon Barkley run, and then all of a sudden you have Dallas Goedert behind the defense making a big catch and run. So I do think that will be a huge part of Philly's offense and making sure that you get Dallas involved, because it's very easy to just, all right, let's line up, let's throw the ball on the perimeter, and then let's hand it to Saquon. And if you get Dallas rolling in that play-action pass game, I think we hear so often, we got to run the ball to set up the pass. We got to establish the run game. You can throw the ball to set up the run. I think some of the best play callers I ever had that philosophy where it's okay to come out and throw it a little bit early, and then all of a sudden they got to loosen up the zone a little bit. They got to play off. They're worried about passing. Now you got Saquon Barkley running the ball downhill, and he's tough to tackle when you don't touch him until he's 4 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Well, obviously this is a big week for everything, not just the big game. And Anne-Marie, you're here, with Gen Youth. You are the CEO of getting these young kids. And we talked about the food and the parties last night. We're pretty privileged to get to go to a party like we went to last night. But that's not always the case, and that's something that you're here with.
Right, we're here at Gen Youth is a national nonprofit. We were founded through the NFL and America's Dairy Farmers, and our mission is to help to ensure that school children nationwide thrive by living well-nourished and physically active lives. And our role here at Super Bowl is grounded in purpose. Kyle is one of our board members, and we are the beneficiary of the Taste of the NFL. It's a culinary and gridiron extravaganza. It's being held at the World War II Museum on Saturday. It's presented by PepsiCo Foundation, Quaker, and Frito-Lay, and it's really a gathering of NFL greats, top chefs, great entertainment, and we're going to bring to life the culture of New Orleans through food and football. We have top chefs from the area. I'm sure you're familiar with Brennan's Restaurant, the Palace Cafe, Restaurant Revolution. We have Zazu. Some of the items on the menu are we have red velvet lobster mac and cheese.
Oh my gosh!
We have
you guys haven't eaten yet today. You're gonna be
crab
starving.
meat cheesecake.
You bring us a sample.
Oyster. I know. You got to come to us.
Come out Saturday.
Come to us. Yes. And we'll have pralines, we'll have bananas Foster, you name it.
And this is we have a lot of listeners in our area. We're the Eagles affiliate that are traveling, I know, this weekend. Yeah. So this is something that's open.
Tickets are still available.
Okay.
Yes, and they can be found at tasteofthenfl.com. It is 4 to 7 p.m. You will not go hungry.
Great.
You'll have opportunity to get autographs from over 30 football players who will be at each station signing autographs. And it's at the end of the day, it's really about purpose and giving back to ensure that children are healthy. We overcome student hunger. 1 in 5 children in this country lives in food insecurity. Every day they wake up wondering where their next meal will come from. And our work at Gen Youth helps to support schools so that those children have access to the school meals that are a lifeline. For many kids, it's the only meal they get on some days.
Sure.
Yeah, for Philly fans, getting the autographs is great, but the celebrity chefs and the food, that's why I'm there. You will not go hungry.
By the way, Kyle Rudolph did play with the Minnesota Vikings. He did score the lone touchdown against the Eagles in 2017.
That was about the only highlight of that.
But that game was not fun for you.
No, I still vividly remember, and I'll be quick with the story. We go down, first drive, we score a touchdown. Defense goes on the field. Not a great possession for Philly first. Yep. And the Boo Birds started to make their way out as we took the field for our second drive. I'm pretty sure we just crossed the 50-yard line, and I'm standing in the huddle at Latavius Murray standing next to me. I'm like, Tay, if we go score here, like this could get ugly. And it was the next third down. Case Keenum threw the pick six, and I'm like, well, it got ugly, but it didn't get ugly in our favor.
Patrick Robinson, man.
And it was one of those games.
That was as loud as the link I've ever heard.
The score seemed so lopsided, but, then again, I remember right before halftime, we had the ball inside the 10. I ran a corner route. I look up thinking the ball is going to land in my lap for the second touchdown of the game. It's going to be tied 14-14, strip sack. Next time we touched the football was 28-7.
Kyle Rudolph, and we appreciate your stories, and that was a great memory for us. Maybe not as much for you, but we appreciate you sharing that with us. Anne-Marie, great stuff as well. For the listeners back home, if you are coming to New Orleans Saturday from 4 to 7, where is the location again?
The National World War II Museum.
Okay, everybody, a lot of Eagles fans coming down here. We appreciate you both stopping by. The Sports Bash Live, that interview was brought to you by Circle Hyundai off exit 109. It's worth the drive. Huge rebates and savings on every Circle Hyundai in stock. Visit CircleHyundai.com. More Sports Bash from Radio Row coming up on 97.3 ESPN.